Well, hello everyone. Happy Friday to everybody. I hope you guys are getting to ride some. Mike and Tamara here again, and was reading Tamara's bio, and it's impressive. I want to read it again. I read it last week. Tamara is a licensed cycling coach with both USA Cycling and United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy. She has coached many athletes. She's even coaching me on the side a little bit and helping me get better, and even at a national level. Also, she is a triathlon coach, qualifying athletes to the World Championships, and she's got a pretty good resume there, getting people to Kona. Tamara is also a lifetime competitive athlete, and she's qualified for Grand Fondo Nationals. In addition, she is heavily involved in virtual cycling as a ride leader with the U.S. military esports. And I actually got to ride with one of your guys a couple of days ago, and it was funny in the text. He texted me, he passed me, and he was supposed to be off. And I'm telling you, I was having a hard time, Tamara, keeping his will. So you're doing a good job coaching him.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll list her website in the comments, but if you wanted to write it down, it's Ignite Sports Performance Coaching. That's Ignite Sports Performance Coaching.com, and you can get in touch with her there. So today we have a something that's important to me as I try to raise my FTP, and I'll give you guys a teaser for a future show. We're going to talk about in future shows training apps, and I say this because Garmin has my FTP where I think I'm much higher in my FTP because it has been well over 3, and now it's in the 2s. But Tamara, tell us, why is FTP? Why is it? What exactly is it, and why is it so important?
Well, FTP is short for functional threshold power.
Mhm.
It was designed many years ago by the great Joel Fryl. It's an estimated measure of your highest sustainable power output that you can do for an hour. We typically do an FTP test over a 20-minute all-out effort,
Right.
and it's 95% of your average overall effort. And so
Okay.
it really is an estimate. So I just
Right.
want to be very clear about that. But it gives us the foundation for the training, right?
Right.
So all of your training when you're using things like Training Peaks is a big one. As a coach, I use Training Peaks. So it allows, the estimates of the zones for the different training that we would be putting out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It really is. It is a crucial metric that we use
Yeah.
because it really, it's your ability to hold that higher power, right? And the
Right.
only way we have to have a measure stick to use in order to be able to, push into those zones to develop the training.
Yeah, and I've said it's important to me because I'm trying to qualify. Well, I'm already qualified for the National Senior Olympics. Yes, I'm
Hmm.
old, but the speed that I want to achieve, I have to have a certain FTP to hit that speed. And that speed is 25 miles an hour for 30 minutes flat. That if and I can do that now for a 5 mile lap, but I can't do it for 12 miles, and I have to do it for 12 miles. So I've got to do it for
Well, this
39 minutes or 29 minutes.
this is your base. This is your foundation. This is your aerobic engine. That's
Hmm.
what you're with your FTP. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, good. Can you tell the viewers what specific types of workouts will help us increase our FTP?
Uh, VO2 training, threshold training, where you're holding longer intervals at or above threshold, doing VO2 intervals. Over-unders are really good. So over FTP, under FTP. But recovery is just as important. So that's a critical factor. You can't just be training to raise your FTP all the time. You have to have the hard workouts structured in. You also have to have the recovery workouts and the recovery days off.
Okay. Yeah, and you and I have spoken about that off camera that
Yeah,
recovery is important. And I,
very.
I guess too, getting accurate information, as you mentioned earlier, the teaser that I mentioned is we're going to vet out some of the best training apps and how to get that accurate FTP. But any other training methods or tools that you would recommend or supplements Is there a certain supplement for recovery that you recommend?
Oh, definitely. Things like glutamine, BCAAs, your protein powders to get the protein in.
Hmm.
Your nutrition plays a huge role
Okay,
in terms of your performance and your recovery for sure.
very
And
good.
it's really important, whether you're an endurance athlete or a bodybuilder, no matter what the sport is, when you're wanting to improve, the improvement is not made during the effort.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen. The effort goes in and the improvement is made during the recovery.
Okay.
Just like when you go to the gym and you train the muscles and you rip up all the muscle
Mm.
fibers, they only grow as a result of the damage that you've done to those muscles. And so feeding them properly, getting the appropriate rest helps the muscles repair. It's the same thing in cycling, whether it's your lungs, your heart, and your heart's a muscle,
Right.
or your muscles themselves in your legs.
Okay. Interesting. So tell us what is better, increasing your FTP or increasing the amount of time you can spend at FTP?
Definitely increasing your FTP, in my personal opinion, is
Hmm.
superior than the amount of time. So that is your power that you're going to be increasing.
Okay. So did you mean it's how long can you sustain it? Um,
No,
or
not how long you can sustain it. That's not the crucial factor. It's
okay.
how high you get your
Okay,
FTP. And
okay, I got you. So it's that 20-minute window is the secret sauce to get it as high as you can for that 20-minute window.
well, definitely, but I mean, it's all part of it. You definitely have to then start working on longer
Right.
L intervals. This is all part of it, and it does take time, right? Unfortunately, there's no quick fix to anything.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
good. So most people dread taking an FTP test. I'm actually
they
looking
all
forward to
do.
it. When is the best time to take that test and why is it important to take the test?
Well, it's hugely important because if you're doing workouts, right? Your
Mhm.
workouts are based on your training zones, and your training zones are based on what your FTP is. If your FTP is too low, your workout is not going to be as effective as it should be. So you want to make sure that you've got an accurate FTP test. Now, I've seen, people recommend doing them every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks,
Mhm.
stuff like that. I think the best time to do them is right before a new structured training block.
Okay.
Typically we put things into mesocycles and have structured training blocks. So, you're going into a new training block. It's your build season. It's not your competition season. This is important to also
Right.
note that you'd be doing this in your build season, and getting an accurate FTP test so that all of the workouts that are structured around that are more accurate. The
Okay.
best time to do it is definitely not after a really huge week of training where you're
Mhm.
fatigued. You want to be well rested. You want to be
Okay.
well nourished, hydrated.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you and I exchanged text messages this week, and
Yeah.
I told you I went about 75% on that one effort that you were commenting on,
Yeah.
and you know, I guess I know I could have put more into it if like if someone had been riding with me, like if Jason had been with me, or if I'd been riding virtually with Greg, I would have done everything I could to stay on their wheel just for bragging rights. I mean, we do
Of
that all the
course.
time.
It's
We
all
do,
ego.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, men we're that way, and
Male
so
ego.
so it would have been then we talk trash if I'd gotten dropped, and I couldn't
Of
handle
course.
that. But I did notice that I mean, as much as I wanted to push it harder, there was a little bit of fear there, just respecting the muscle system and making sure that I don't tear something up. And I guess
Yeah.
that's the importance of recovery, making sure you're fresh when you do it. It's possible I'm taking today off. I'm going to do some core work later, but I may do that tomorrow in part of my 3 hour ride. I may incorporate a 20-minute FTP test somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So
And
do
that's
I need
the
to do a
thing.
separate ride after warming up and just do it just for 20 minutes, or can I incorporate it in a ride and will it record it?
Oh, you can do it in a ride. It'll definitely record it. It
Okay.
will definitely adjust it. I'll get an email saying your athlete Mike Townsend got a, increase in his,
Okay.
yeah.
FTP.
And that being said, that's actually important to touch on because I
Mhm.
actually do have athletes that absolutely despise the structured FTP test.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, what I'll do, especially when we're doing them virtually, on the trainer in Zwift or
Hmm.
whatever trainer road, um, we'll structure it so that maybe they're doing an ITT or something to that effect. The other thing too is that sometimes, we're doing a hill climb and we can adjust the FTP that way.
Right.
Personally, I'm not a fan of that
Yeah.
because everybody can push on an uphill, right? Like,
Right.
it takes a lot of power. You're standing and all of that.
Right.
FTP should be done sitting down. And
Okay.
so,
That was going to be my next question. So I don't need to be climbing Mount Vento tomorrow when I do the FTP test.
no,
Does it have to be seated? You're,
yes.
okay. What if you're climbing while you're seated? Is that okay?
Well,
You,
sure, it's okay, but yeah, for me, a more accurate
is on
FTP test is going to be a full out effort, just
on
going
flat.
flat. And
Okay.
so that's why when you have these structured FTP tests that are in Zwift and all of that, there's no gradient, right? So when you're in workout mode in Zwift, even if
Yeah.
you're on a hill, you're not feeling that gradient.
Right.
It's always going to feel flat.
Okay.
So for me, a more accurate test is always going to be on a flatter.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, you kind of answered, you may have answered this question. The next, it's like you saw the notes. What is the best way to prepare for this FTP test? I know we talked about recovery, but what about mentally getting yourself psyched up for it? Because again, most people hate it. I kind of like it because I want to know what I'm capable of so that I know what I need to work on.
You definitely have to prepare for it mentally. And I
Mhm.
think that that's the part that most people have a hard time with because they can't handle the fact if their FTP actually measures lower than what it was before.
I see. Okay.
It's a very hard thing to deal with. And that's why I say the FTP is an estimate only, right? So
Okay.
you might be having a bad day.
Right.
You might not, have had a great sleep. You might
Hmm.
not, be hydrated. You might just mentally not be in that place. So when an FTP comes in lower, we typically will just scrap it and we'll say, forget it. Just keep
Okay.
the FTP where it is, carry on. We'll do
Okay.
another one later. We
Very
just
good.
let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And touch a little, we've talked about rest and recovery and how important it is at raising it. Any common mistakes you see cyclists make when trying to improve their FTP?
Yeah, they just go too hard without the rest. So they add in, more training. They're like, okay, well, I'll do a VO2 workout now, and then I'll go do some over-unders in a couple of days, and then I'll go do a big hill climb. And, it's
Mm-hmm.
just max efforts all the time and
Hmm.
not realizing how detrimental that is because eventually what ends up happening is the performance starts to, suffer and they
Hmm.
start noticing. Numbers are going down. My sprint's not as good,
Hmm.
or my hill climb's not as powerful and I can't hold these watts anymore. And we should be paying attention, saying, okay, well, got to get those structured. We hear a lot about zone 2,
Hmm.
recovery rides, right? Rest days,
Right. Okay.
focus
Good.
on nutrition.
And now you're also involved in a lot of virtual cycling and esports. How does
Right.
training virtually in that environment compare to outdoor training when it comes to FTP gains?
So for me, I personally feel that training virtually has a lot of advantages because when you're outside,
Hmm.
you're dealing with traffic, you're dealing with
Hmm.
traffic lights. You have to plan these things in. So especially if you're doing an FTP
Yeah.
test outside, that can be extremely difficult because you don't know what kind of factors you're going to deal with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and safety is an issue that you've got to take into
Hmm.
account. So when you're on the trainer, you just don't have those things to worry about. You can
Right.
focus specifically on those workouts without those interferences. So
Yeah, that's good. And then any advice that you'd give to somebody who has hit a FTP plateau and can't seem to move the needle? Uh, how can you improve when you get to that flat spot?
first of all, You
Mhm.
have to look at the whole picture. It's not just about your training. You have to
Okay.
look at what you're doing for your training. You have to be looking at what you're doing for your recovery. You have to be looking at what you're doing for your nutrition.
Right.
But not only that, do you really know what you should be doing for your training? You
Hmm.
know, these are, you have to take your goals into account because there's always those things too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, as you raise your FTP, you're going to do better at getting to your goals as well. You're going to do better at the race, or you're going to do better at whatever it is that, you've got on the agenda. But you have to look at the big picture. It's not just the training.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, I appreciate your time. This was a quick one today, but if anybody has any comments, they want to ask questions, please put it in the comment section on YouTube. Uh, Next week, we'll talk a little bit about training apps. I'm impressed with the information that Training Peaks gives. It's pretty interesting. I use Strava, but I don't pay for Strava. We've talked about Garmin, and the internet's full of memes about how Garmin is they're pretty tough on us,
It
but
is.
yeah, and how Apple is easy. Of course, a lot
Yeah.
of people don't understand that Apple is a smartwatch that has fitness features, and
Yeah.
Garmin is a fitness watch that has
Yeah.
smartphone and smartwatch features. And so we'll talk a lot about that. Have some bottled water, maybe not coffee, but have bottled water together and see how that goes. But thanks so much for your time. If you need to get in touch with Tamara, Ignite Sports Performance Coaching.com. Again, that's Ignite Sports Performance Coaching.com. Tamara, thank you. It's so good to see you as always. I
It's
look
good to
forward
see.
to our next discussion.
Thank you.
All right.